Okay, so we are looking to find the exact value of cosecant 5 pi over 6. So a couple of things I noticed right away. The first thing is I noticed cosecant. This is the reciprocal of sine. So I'm going to find the sine of 5 pi over 6, and then I'm going to flip my fraction. The second thing I notice is that I am dealing with 5 pi over 6. So we have to figure out what quadrant we're in. So remember, it's 0, pi over 2, pi. 5 pi over 6 is in quadrant 2, because if I had pi, this is like saying 6 pi over 6. So 5 pi over 6 is right before it. So I am in quadrant 2. I also know that I have a reference angle of pi over 6. And I know that sine is positive in quadrant 2. So I am looking for positive sine of pi over 6. And then I'm going to take that answer and I am going to flip it. So hopefully you know your exact values, or you are going to memorize them, because the sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So this is equal to 1/2, but then it's a reciprocal, so I need to flip it. So that means that the cosecant of 5 pi over 6 is equal to 2. Our next one is looking for the exact value of tangent 13 pi over 4. So remember, tangent, you can memorize the values, or it is equal to sine over cosine. So 13 pi over 4, I have to figure out what quadrant I'm in. 13 pi over 4 is greater than 2 pi, which means I need to find its coterminal angle. So I need to subtract 2 pi. So 2 pi is really 8 pi over 4, if I'm counting in pi over 4s just to make it easier. So I am going to do 13 pi over 4 minus 8 pi over 4, which gives me 5 pi over 4. So that means that the tangent of 13 pi over 4 is the same thing as the tangent of 5 pi over 4. And now I need to determine what quadrant I'm in. So remember, it's pi on the left-hand side. So that is the same thing as 4 pi over 4. So that means that 5 pi over 4 is just past that. I'm in quadrant 3. So in quadrant 3, I have to determine the sine of tangent. So quadrant 3 is negative x, negative y. Tangent is y over x. So I have negative y over negative x, which is a positive. So in quadrant 3, tangent is positive. And my reference angle is pi over 4. So that means that this is equivalent to positive tangent of pi over 4. Hopefully you have your exact values memorized and you know that this is equal to 1. So that means that the tangent of 13 pi over 4 is equal to 1. Moving on to our next one, I'm now looking for coordinate points. So my final answer needs to be an x comma y. Remember that it is equal to r times the cosine of theta, r times the sine of theta. So I am looking for 4 pi over 3. So first of all, my reference angle is pi over 3, and now I need to determine my quadrants. So this would really be 3 pi over 3, which means that 4 pi over 3 is right past it, so I am in quadrant 3. So my final answer has to have both a negative x coordinate and a negative y coordinate. The first part is asking me to do it on the unit circle. Remember, your radius is 1. So that means on the unit circle, the cosine of 4 pi over 3, comma, the sine of 4 pi over 3 will give me my answer. I know that I have a negative and a negative, and my reference angle is going to be pi over 3. So that means I need to determine this is part A. I need to determine my exact values for sine and cosine of pi over 3. Cosine is 1/2, and sine is radical 3 over 2. Part B is then asking for a radius of 4. So the only difference here is that I need to take my coordinate and multiply them by 4 because I have an r in both spots. So this is negative 4 over 2. And negative 4 radical 3 over 2, but we're going to reduce that. So it becomes negative 2 comma negative 2 radical 3. Last one, it says in the xy plane, the terminal right of angle theta is in standard position, intersects a circle of radius r at the point negative 3 radical 2 comma 3 radical 2. We're looking for the values of theta and r. So the first thing is I know that I have negative x, positive y. So in my quadrants, that would be negative x, positive y. It has to be a quadrant 2 angle. So once I determine my reference angle, I have to make sure that I'm in quadrant 2 when I state theta. Remember what we just did before. R cosine theta, r sine theta. So that means that I'm going to work with a positive just because it's a little bit easier. I have r sine theta is equal to 3 radical 2. So I want you to think of your exact values. My exact values that we know, if I have the sine of pi over 6, it would be equal to 1/2. The sine of pi over 4 is equal to radical 2 over 2. And the sine of pi over 3 is equal to radical 3 over 2. So I see a 2 under my radical, which means I have to be talking about this value. So I have to have a reference angle of pi over 4. So that means that r times radical 2 over 2 had to give me 3 radical 2. So you can solve this like an equation. I could divide by radical 2 over 2. I can divide by radical 2 over 2. On this side, I have 3 radical 2 divided by radical 2 over 2, which really is the same thing as 3 radical 2 times 2 over radical 2. So I have 6. You might be able to recognize that automatically, or you might have to do this actual math to get it. So that means that r is equal to 6. Now I need to find theta. We know my reference angle is quadrant 4 as pi over 4, and I know I need to be in quadrant 2. So remember that we start, this is pi over 4. Then 2 pi over 4 reduces. Then it would be 3 pi over 4. 4 pi over 4 reduces. This would be 5 pi over 4. 6 pi over 4 reduces, and this would be 7 pi over 4. So if I'm in quadrant 2, that means that theta is equal to 3 pi over 4. And you could, if you wanted to, check your work by doing 6 cosine 3 pi over 4, 6 sine of 3 pi over 4, and making sure that we end up with this coordinate point here, negative 3 radical 2 comma 3 radical 2, which you will. So r is 6 and theta is 3 pi over 4.